Yes, people, what's happening? Welcome back to the channel and welcome back to another live stream. First time been live on the channel for a little while. First live of the World Cup, and it's the big one tomorrow evening. England taking on the USA, and a win for England would secure qualification for Gareth Southgate's boys for the last 16 with a game to spare. For the US, on the other hand, after a disappointing 1-1 draw against Wales, they really need to pick up a win if they're going to have any chance of qualifying for the last 16 themselves. A talented side, but ultimately, costing a mistake, giving away a penalty, cost them the points against Wales, and they'll be bang up against it against England to try and qualify for the last 16 out of a group that is very open. England, on the other hand, in good form. A great win against Iran in the opening day, went better than myself, and I think a lot of England fans could have expected it to go in terms of the amount of goals, performance. To score 6 in your opening game against an Iran side that is ranked inside the world's top 20, is the top-ranked Asian side, and to kind of turn up and I fully expected England to beat Iran, but to win in the fashion that we did, and the way that we played was a real positive for me heading into the rest of the tournament. And I know it's still early days. We've only literally just the last group games have finished, the first round of matches. We haven't even gone into the second round of matches yet. But you'd have to say, apart from Brazil tonight, who obviously looks good, England, you'd have to say, out of the opening round of fixtures, along with Spain, look the best placed teams at the moment. Obviously, it's very early days, so I'm not kind of getting ahead of myself or anything like that. But obviously, in terms of this game against the US, England heading in, in good form, as I said, seems to that run of poor form in the Nations League and the build up to the World Cup seems to have been forgotten about now that we've kind of got that first win under our belts and in such convincing fashion. But this game against the US will be a tougher test. I still fully expect England to win, but ultimately this will be a tougher test, a lot higher quality of player. Obviously, being a Chelsea fan, like Christian Pulisic there, their main man, got a great assist in the opening game. A lot of pressure will be on his shoulders. He'll be desperate to perform against England, against some of his club mates like Raheem Sterling, Mason Mount, and a good opportunity for him to show what he can do. Again, Timothy Weah's talented youngster. I'm interested to see whether they start with Giovanni Reina, the Dortmund youngster, who's very good. That didn't obviously come off the bench at all in the opening game against Wales. So the US have got some good players, but again, you'd expect England to have far too much quality for them. But as we've seen in this World Cup, matches are not won on paper, unfortunately. We've seen Saudi Arabia upset Argentina. We've seen Japan beat Germany. These are things that perhaps, like, traditionally you wouldn't really expect to happen. So, you've got to turn up and you've got to be on it. And as good as England were, there were a few areas that need improvement. And obviously Gareth Southgate highlighted that at the end of the game when he was speaking, in terms of lapses of concentration, a few sloppy defensive errors, to obviously concede twice, and obviously gave away a cheap penalty at the end there, which should never have been a penalty. And the inconsistencies in the VAR again rearing their heads, literally like a handful of games into the tournament. You're getting a penalty for the slightest of shirt tugs from John Stones, but then Maguire basically rugby tackled in the box, and he doesn't get anything. But I think the big questions heading into this clash is whether Southgate's going to stick with the 4-3-3 formation that works so well, with Mason Mount obviously excelling on the left-hand side on that midfield three, made up of obviously Declan Rice at the base and Jude Bellingham on that right-hand side, kind of that free role to plenty of license to get forward, or whether he reverts back to a 3-4-3. Obviously, Kyle Walker is hoping to be fit and in the squad. I think he was named on the bench, but obviously he wasn't used, and it's going to be a big call for Southgate as to whether he opts to bring Kyle Walker back in, because Kieran Trippier is a firm favourite of Gareth Southgate. And then, given the fact that, he just won 6-2, it's very tricky to change a winning side when you've had a convincing win as well. So it wouldn't be a case of, I'll just bring Walker in for Trippier. I think Southgate, for me, would probably go with the back four again. But if he was to go the back three, he'd be thinking, right, well, who comes in? Does he play, Kyle Walker on the right-hand side of that back three and then obviously play Trippier, or does he bring Eric Dyer in? I personally think, for me, if it was down to me, I'd be putting strongest side out, same 11 for for this game as played in the last game. No real reason to change it. Get the win, get the qualification for the last 16 sorted, and then against Wales, you can have a little bit of an experiment, play some rotation. Maybe start the likes of Rashford, start the likes of Grealish, maybe give Maddison some minutes as well against Wales, and then rest players that way, rather than taking a risk and reverting back to a back three for this game against the US. I think attack for England is the best form of defence. We've got to work to our strengths, and our strengths, despite being good defensively, our strengths are in the forward area and the attacking players we've got going forward in that midfield, in that attack, and we can definitely cause teams a lot of damage there. But I don't know how I feel about heading into this one, because whilst you'd fully expect England to win, the US they're not terrible. Look, England are definitely better, quote unquote, than England, than Iran were. But England, have come a cropper in games in recent times against this kind of opposition. The US will be bang up for it, almost nothing to lose. They have to get a result in this game. Whereas for England, yes, they'll be looking for a result. But ultimately, if we weren't to get a result, it wouldn't be a complete disaster. But yeah, you just want to get the points on the board as quickly as possible, secure that qualification, so that when we head in to play Wales on Tuesday, that game is done and dusted, and it almost becomes a bit of a dead rubber, as it were, and an opportunity to rest players, to rotate, and give others a bit of an opportunity. But yeah, I was really impressed with England. I think what impressed me the most was kind of how fluid we were in attack, how much better we looked with a 4 at the back than we did with a 5 at the back. I know at the Euros, we made that World Cup, made that final there, playing predominantly the back three of that Rice Phillips pivot, and obviously the attack of kind of Sterling and Kane, and then a bit of rotation of Saka, Grealish, Foden at times. But yeah, that was the most pleasing thing, was how good we looked, how fluid we looked, and we still looked defensively solid despite having one less defender on the pitch. For Declan Rice did a superb job in playing at the base of that midfield, allowing Mason Mount, who obviously kind of set the press, dictated the press, set the tempo of the press. So yeah, it was promising, and I would like to see that again. But again, that's the big call that Gareth Southgate faces. Will he be tempted to revert back to type? Because this has been one of my criticisms of Southgate, is that he's too safe. And obviously, yes, partly through circumstances, although he could have fully gone with a 3, could have put Eric Dyer in there. He actually went with an attacking formation, and we reaped the rewards of it. I mean, I know you can say, oh, it's only a run, but you still got to put in that level of performance. You've still got to, do the business on the pitch. So yeah, I just, that's my big hope from this, is I really, really hope that he sticks with that 4-3-3 system and looks to play on the front foot again, because this England team is definitely more suited to playing on the front foot than it is playing on the back foot, playing more defensively. We still look defensively solid. Yes, there are a few lapses of concentration which Southgate will be keen to rectify, and against perhaps a better level of opposition, we could have been punished more. But ultimately, that wasn't the case. But yeah, you want to make sure that we kind of clear up a few errors. Slightly poor marking from Harry Maguire on the for the first goal, even, should I say. But all in all, a couple of small lapses of concentration at the back, which, all right, didn't cause any problems in the game as such. But ultimately, going forwards, and if we get to the latter stages, which hopefully we do, then you've got to cut those errors out, because that could be the difference between going through and ultimately being on that plane back home. So yeah, you've got to do better in that regard. But ultimately, there were a lot of positives, and Southgate, I think, will be delighted. I think I was personally delighted with the performance. I wasn't expecting that to be the case at all. And, this World Cup is looking open. It really is. Yes, Dharmesh, how are we doing, bro? You good?
Yes, big up, bro. Thanks for having me again. How are you?
Mate. Pleasure. Yeah, mate, I've basically just been kind of saying that, obviously England with a win against the US tomorrow night will secure qualification for the last 16. And I guess the main talking point heading into this game is Gareth Southgate gonna stick with that 4-3-3 that he rolled out against Iran and worked really well, or is he going to be tempted to revert back to that 3-4-3, perhaps a bit more defensive solidity? The US are a step up from Iran. They do possess better attacking players, like Christian Pulisic, Timothy Weah, etc. Gio Reyna can cause problems as well, but ultimately, for me, I think he's got to stick with a 4, considering how well it works. And can you really change a team that's just won 6-2 in their opening game?
Yeah, it's a tough one because I actually think we obviously going forward we were great, but I thought defensively I'm still not convinced by England, which is why I'm sort of forward the 5 at the back because I just don't think we've got the tools and the players to play a 4. But I think, look, given what you just said, like obviously 6-2 win against Iran, I think he'll stick with the back 4, but I think it's risky with the players that they've got out wide. I think they can exploit, especially how high our fullbacks were as well. Like if you saw how high Shaw and Trippier were, players like Pulisic, Reyna, and who's that other guy? Is it Tim Weah? Yeah, Tim Weah as well. Yeah. And they obviously got like players like McKenna who can drop in as well. But it'll be interesting to see how he lines up. But my gut says he'll stick with the 4, but I'd be more inclined to stick with a 5, just with the crop of players that we've got and the quality.
It's just tricky though, because obviously, given how well that midfield worked and how balanced it looked, Mason Mount I thought was outstanding. And from a Chelsea perspective, you look at that midfield, Mount, Bellingham, and Rice, and you're thinking, gee, that needs to be our midfield next season.
100%, bro.
But who knows really? But I mean, yeah, I thought it looked really well balanced. I thought that was a perfect kind of combination of players in there. They kind of complemented each other really well. Rice did a superb job at the base of that midfield, and then Mount kind of covering a lot of ground, a lot of work rate in there. Sets the tempo for the press, and then Bellingham almost that allows Bellingham to kind of have a free role, get himself into the box, and almost be like that box to box midfielder that he is, and he pops up with goals. He does. Oh, we've got another man in the building.
Hello, mate.
Gaffer, how are we doing? All good, mate?
Yeah, very well.
Big up, George.
Yeah,
Hello,
mate. We're
just
just basically just saying, mate. Thoughts on the kind of major talking point, back 3 or back 4. I mean, for me, the 4. I've been critical of Southgate being too pragmatic, too defensive, kind of, set up to not lose rather than set up to win. He goes with a 4-3-3 against Iran, and it works really well. And the team looked a lot better. It looked a lot more fluid. And, yes, we looked way better in attack. Dharmesh was kind of saying we did look a little bit more suspect at the back at times. Where do you stand on it? Because it's hard heading into this game to really change anything from a team that's won 6-2. But then I guess you can't really rule out a potential return to the 5.
Yeah, and I do expect changes. I think it's all to do with the opposition that you're facing. I think we all expected, regardless of the result, I think we expected to beat Iran over 90 minutes. So I think he had an opportunity to experiment a little bit there. But I mean, bar a disaster, we were going to win that game. I think against the tougher opposition, when we get later down the line, he's probably going to go tried and tested. But then I didn't mind the leaking of goals. I think we need to accept that we're going to concede, and I think that was probably one of the drawbacks last tournament, where we defended so well and didn't concede many goals at all that when we actually ended up conceding goals, particularly against Italy, we weren't really sure how to approach it. So it's not always that bad to let in goals and just accept the fact that we're going to have moments like that and how we respond to those. No doubt that the next 2 games in the group are going to be tougher, but I'm quite happy with the 4.
Yeah,
especially with Kyle Walker injured, I think it works well.
Yeah, I mean, do you almost feel then that given the fact that we kind of went, as you said, we went with being solid first and just trying to get the winning games by the odd goal here and there, and much like watching Chelsea in the recent past, if we conceded, you didn't really fancy us to win, or we would really struggle to get something out of a game. And I think that's been evident with England in the past. I know there's been success, but you always felt that being defensively solid, if we let one in, despite the forward players we had, we weren't that great going forwards. You didn't really fancy us to kind of break teams down and get the goals required. So, mate, George, do you think that actually it might be better for us to play with the handbrake off a bit more and go for more goals? And if we let 1 or 2 in, if we scored 3 or 4, it doesn't really matter too much. I know not every game's going to go like that, but do you think actually we could be better suited to kind of playing the opposite way almost?
Well, I think that's probably one criticism that a lot of people flagged in the Euros, didn't they? That maybe he was too defensive, and that actually when the game was there for the taking, and in moments where we dominate, we don't take charge of the game, and ultimately it cost us towards the end. So, yeah, I think we can be a bit more attacking threat. And we've got one of the best forward lines in this tournament. I've got absolutely no doubts about that. It's I know Kane's a vital part to that, not just scoring, but you could see his contribution to assisting the goals. I think he needs to, and I think, like you said, mate, I think that's your one criticism of Southgate, isn't it? That perhaps you've got all that attacking talent on the pitch, and he's not able to perhaps get the best out of it. But it remains to be seen, because we don't know. I mean, Iran's such a difficult one to gauge, isn't it? Because it's not really the level of opposition that we're going to be required to beat if we're going to go on and win this World Cup. So I don't know what your thoughts are, but
yeah, I mean, it's interesting because obviously, as you say, that it's hard. You don't want to get too carried away, but it's hard not to get carried away. After you've smashed in 6 in your first game, and people that say, "Oh, it's only a run," and I've said that myself. Yes, there will be tougher tests. That game against Iran should never have been that easy. That should have been a lot harder. And I think it's a combination of England playing really well, but also Iran just getting it horribly wrong on the day, because they're the top ranked Asian team. They're inside the world's top 20. They're ranked higher than Japan are, and yet you've seen what Japan went and did against Germany yesterday. So yeah, I mean, it just goes to show the rankings don't necessarily mean too much once you arrive at the tournament. Yes, there will be tougher tests as well, but I mean, Dharmesh, do you think this back four system can work against a higher quality of opposition?
Oh, it's tough because, like you said, we haven't really sort of come up against anyone that's like challenging us in a way. Like, fair enough, like Iran like scored a great goal. Like, their first goal was you have to hold your hands up and say that was a good goal. But a little bit criticism in terms of like Maguire could have done better, but you just have to hold your hands up. And yeah, I just think as well, like playing this back five, like England have been playing this back five for so long, and to suddenly revert to a 4, I think it's kind of strange from Southgate. But if it wins the World Cup, then it wins the World Cup. But I just think it's strange transitioning straight from a 5 to a 4, especially with the tried and tested that he's sort of done. So it's tough because when you come up against teams like Brazil, Uruguay, obviously Belgium, Spain, I'm just going to list the big ones, Portugal, Germany, even Japan, to be honest, they might hit us with a low block. And obviously we've got the quality of players that can sort of unlock a pass or have a shot from outside the box. But like when it comes the other way, going defensively, like imagine Neymar, Richarlison, and like Vinicius Jr. just countering on like England. Basically, I don't think we've got the players for that, especially with Kyle Walker not being in the team. I think he's a huge factor to playing the 5. So when it comes to big oppositions, like I'm still not convinced in a way. But like you both said, like to like playing teams like Iran, for example, quite low block, and maybe even Wales, I think we can sort of risk taking that playing as a 4. Sorry. So yeah, that's my sort of stance on playing the 4 and the 5. Yeah.
And George, do you? I've forgotten what I was going to say now. That's really fucking good, isn't it? Oh yeah, I've got it, mate. Do you think that despite how good this England team is and how well we've done in recent tournaments and the recent past, do you still look at it and think we're still a bit suspect defensively? I'm not saying like major problems in defence, but you would look at it, and I know Maguire has been good in an England shirt, but he's not playing regularly for Man United, and you could even being really critical, he was probably at fault for that first Iran goal. John Stones, again, is a good defender, but has got an odd lapse of concentration in him with that shirt. Like, I know that was a little bit harsh, but you shouldn't be doing that in the box. Do you look at England and think, despite how good they are and how good they can be, defensively it's still a little bit ropey?
Well, I think Southgate's been very honest in the fact that we're going to have to ride our luck at some point in this tournament. And we even saw it in the last one, didn't it? That the one that stands out is that Germany miss in the last tournament. Do you remember that, when the mistake was one-on-one? He
scores that any other day of the week.
Yeah. And we've got individuals in the team that, unfortunately, I don't know what it is about England, but just you can sense that they feel the pressure Unlike other teams that have a bit more confidence, like France and Brazil, who will just, doesn't matter what the score is, they'll just keep playing the same way. And you sense that players like Stones, Maguire, they do have an individual error in them. Pickford the same. I mean, some of his distribution sometimes is crazy. But we're gonna have moments in this World Cup where, we are gonna have to probably scrape through 1-0. We probably are gonna have to maybe perhaps win another penalty shootout. It's going to be fine margins, as it always is in knockout football. But I actually think you look back at some of the tournaments. I mean, take away the Nations League, which was a disaster. We have been quite defensively solid, but it's going to be different, like Dharmesh said, with not having Kyle Walker and having to revert now to a 4 does seem odd, considering Southgate's had this, well, I don't know how many years he's actually been in charge now, but he's had
third tournament. It must be about 8 years.
Third tournament.
Really.
So,
3 tournaments. Yeah, something.
And he kept mentioning in the pre-match build up towards the World Cup about a process, and that he would be silly to kind of go against what he believes is the best way that England can do well at a tournament. So the next step is obviously to win a tournament after getting to the final. But we have got issues. Injury issues haven't helped. But we are going to be suspect. That's the bottom line. But we have to face this.
I mean, just on that back 5 thing. I mean, Kyle Walker not being available doesn't mean that the back 5 can't be played, because he could have easily put Eric Dyer in there. I mean, I'm not a massive. Yeah, it is, but like that he could have still played that system if he wanted to. But I think the fact that he's actually, I think. I mean, I'm not saying this is like a watershed moment for Southgate and he's changing as a manager. This could have been very much game specific and due to personnel that were available. But I think this would have shown to him that actually, do you know what? I can take that handbrake off a little bit and I can actually play a bit more of an expansive brand of football. And I think the only way we're going to find out about whether this actually works against the better level of opposition is by just doing it. Because if we keep doing what we've always done, then we're going to keep getting those same results. It's just not going to quite happen for us. And I do think that I hate keep going back to things that have already happened because it's pointless. But if we'd been like a bit more on the front foot in that Euros final, I honestly think we could have won that game 2 or 3-0. And we could have been 2 or 3 goals up at half time, and that's the game done. So I think for me that might have kind of set off a bit of a light bulb in his head and think, do you know what? Yes, I am quite a defensive manager, but this has shown to me that actually I can let the handbrake off a little bit and I can go for it a bit more. And I've got the players to be able to play that style of football. It's not like we have to play a back 5 because we're lacking in other areas of the pitch. Like there's no reason for us to be playing a back 5 with the quality of players that we've got available. That's kind of how I see it. But George, big plus, Harry Kane fit after that ankle scan. I mean, I think a lot of the whole nation was sweating on that one. Kane's had a lot of ankle injuries in the past. I guess that's another worry for England is that, do you look at it? I know teams are reliant on players, but I guess particularly England, anything happens to Harry Kane and it changes the whole outlook of the team.
Yeah, it would be naive to say that we can do it without him. I think he is. You only had to look that he didn't score, but he was pretty much included in pretty much all of the goals. I mean, the service to Sterling for his goal, coming from deep, starting off counter attacks. I mean, he's so influential, including his goals as well. I thought didn't he get the golden boot last tournament?
Yeah, there are a few pens in there, but
I know, a few pens. But then you need someone from the penalty spot as well to put it away.
Yeah, for sure.
England renowned for not doing that, so it's good to have him. But it was a bit of a scare. I'm with you. I'm surprised that being the score that it was, why we then risked and he played that long. I'm not sure. Maybe just for confidence. I don't know, in game time to adjust, because obviously they haven't had long to get used to the conditions out there. But yeah, they said that's a huge plus for us, considering we've always been quite unlucky with injuries in tournaments, and this one particularly with fullbacks and everything else. So yeah, he's absolutely essential if we're going to go deep.
Yeah, for sure. Let me just get a couple of things in the chat and then we'll get into the team. We've got a special shout out to Silva, 97 minutes tonight, clean sheet. Yeah, I mean, Thiago Silva, he was outstanding again tonight. I don't know where Chelsea were going to be without him. It's going to be
a sad day, man. It's going to be a sad day.
It will be a sad day. I'm probably going to have to get the Thiago Silva shirt before he calls it a day. I'm going to have to do it. Going to have to do it. But he was outstanding tonight, like he always is. Let's get into the team then, boys. We're going to chat about this a little bit more. I've got it set up as a back four because I think that's what we should go with. And I think the general consensus is that we should probably go with that as well. George, no real question marks, I don't think, from anyone who the goalkeeper is going to be. It's going to be Jordan Pickford. It wasn't really tested, if we're being perfectly honest. I think he actually did make a really good save onto the crossbar. From I think it might have been from Taremi, where to prevent an almost certain goal there. George, centre back pairings. Obviously, it's going to be Maguire and Stones. Maguire set to earn his 50th cap. He's coming for a lot of stick. He's not playing for Man United at all. Hasn't been in any sort of form in the build-up to the tournament at all. Southgate shows blind faith in him, what I believe to be blind faith. But really, you can't knock what Maguire's done in an England shirt. But do you think this constant selection of him could come back to bite Southgate in the arse?
Possibly defensively, but he is. I think
he has been good, hasn't he, for England? Yeah. I mean, I know we like banter and we criticise him, but in an England shirt, it's hard. There's not many things you can fault him for.
He hit the bar and also should have got a penalty as well.
Yeah. Got rugby tackles to the floor, didn't he?
Yeah.
I can't put my finger on it. The only thing I can think of is maybe a lot of people have said that perhaps the captaincy for United and the way the club's at the moment, he's feeling that pressure. Whereas in England, he's kind of got the belief that Southgate knows that he's a really integral part of that team, and we're very dangerous, and our main attacking threat is usually set pieces, and he's always there. So again, this back four might, like you said, bite him in the arse with his pace if he gets caught out. Stones should be able to recover and sweep up, but it's going to be a test for him. But you can't fault him so far. So fair play to him. I think he's a dangerous asset. And I'm going to shout now. I reckon he'll probably score on his 50th cap. I'm going to put it out there.
Yeah, you're going to put it out there. You're going for a Maguire goal on his 50th cap. Yeah. I mean, Dharmesh, in terms of the fullbacks, if Kyle Walker is fit, I personally don't see him coming back into the side. I think he'll look to win this game, get qualification secured for the last 16, and then against Wales, it might be easier in a game that's got nothing on it to then play Kyle Walker back into fitness, because Walker's hasn't played for a while. Actually, I could have completely made that up. I can't remember if he's played for City or not recently, but it would make more sense. It would make more sense to perhaps win this game and then use Walker against Wales in a game that's got nothing on it to build his fitness back up again. I mean, what are your thoughts on Kieran Trippier? Obviously, a favourite under Southgate. He's had a good season at Newcastle. He's one of those players that, you wouldn't say he's like the most skillful, but he does do a really good job on that right-hand side, doesn't he? And the fact that he's in the team over Trent just goes to show that Southgate kind of doesn't just look at talent, because if you're looking at talent, we all know Trent is a miles better footballer than Kieran Trippier is. But in terms of overall package and everything that is required to be a defender, Trippier probably actually is better than Trent in terms of what Southgate's looking for and what England are looking for.
Yeah, Trippier, unsung hero, I think, in the Iran game. He was really, really good. Like you just said as well, he's been amazing for Newcastle this season. It's lucky we have Trippier, actually, because obviously with Reece James being out, I think he would have obviously started in that position, but hence his injury. But yeah, Trippier, that's a start. I think his set piece delivery is insane. Like, he's probably one of the best in the league at taking a corner or a free kick. Like, I literally can't believe Spurs got rid of him. Like, especially with their problems on the right now. Like, I can't believe they got rid of Trippier. But as for like Luke Shaw, like, he's similar to Maguire in a way where he's not really sort of getting into the team. He's been getting into the team like a little bit, but in the England shirt, he's actually pretty good, to be honest. And I think the only sort of fear that I have with Shaw is if he gets injured, we don't have an out-and-out left-back, and Shaw's the only one he's sort of taken. So I know Trippier can obviously play there, but it's still kind of risky not to have another left-sided player on that left-back position. So, definitely Shaw has to be rested for Wales if obviously England win tomorrow. But he played really well as well. Can't really fault the fullbacks, to be honest. Yeah,
George, it's mad, isn't it? Like in terms of, I honestly think that any other nation that has Trent Alexander-Arnold, he's playing for them. And we know how talented a footballer is and how gifted he is and how good he can be. Yes, his defensive frailties are clear. But are you surprised that, I mean, like, forget that Southgate's the manager right now, but are you surprised that it's not really happened for Trent at all in an England shirt so far? I know he's got plenty of years on his side, but he doesn't seem to be in favour at all. And it's mad to have a player that talented that is probably going to play next to no minutes at this World Cup.
It is mad. It is. And he must, particularly like a couple of years ago when Liverpool were literally fighting on all fronts, still couldn't get in an England setup. He's probably sitting there thinking, what else do I need to do? Granted, this season he's had a lot of errors, and that's been well documented. It's hard to look past the manager of the national team when you think about this, because there'll be players that just take preference, and that's completely down to the manager and who he trusts in tournaments. And Trippier hasn't really put a foot wrong in tournament football for England since he's played. The free kick against Croatia, his delivery is world class. I know Trent is as well. He's probably a better defender and more adaptable, because if we go a 5, he can again tuck in as well. He can play on the left. It is mad because, like you said, I think Trent Alexander-Arnold is pretty much in any other side without question. But for whatever reason, I think Southgate has his favourites that he trusts, and he's in that spine, I think.
And just on the other side, mate, Luke Shaw, I mean, Dash touched on him, but again, he's another one that hasn't been that great in a Man United shirt recently, but then in an England shirt, he always seems to do pretty well. I mean, it is odd how you can get players that don't tend to do so well for their clubs, but when they put their national team jersey on, they seem to be transformed. I mean, Shaw's another one. I mean, I'm not like a huge Luke Shaw fan, but in terms of what he does for England, you can't really fault it. And if we're being honest and we're taking our Chelsea bias out, even if Chilwell was fit, I still think Shaw would have played over him.
100%.
Yeah. And that's why you've got to give Southgate huge credit, because he's transformed this national team into having. It used to be the other way. It used to be players coming from great club form, coming into the international setup for tournaments, and just didn't perform to the level. I mean, Frank Lampard, a classic example. Never really saw him the best in an England shirt. And now you're seeing players who don't perhaps even start for their clubs, like Maguire, who's just coming into the fold. Shaw again, kind of 50-50. But for some reason, he's got the confidence, because Southgate's instilled this confidence in this national team, where we do believe that they can go out there and play. And for whatever reason, he's turned him into, again, in international football, bit of a danger.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, moving on to that midfield, I mean, I'm going to put in 3 names. I think it's probably going to be the same 3. We're all going to agree with it, but then we can just quickly touch on it. Obviously, Declan Rice, I think it's clear that if we play this system, he's going to be holding. Going to have Jude Bellingham. And it's going to be Mason Mount on the other side. George, I'll come to you first on this one, mate. Let's talk about Jude Bellingham. 19 years of age, got his first England goal, first goal at a World Cup. This kid's special. We've seen how good he's been for Borussia Dortmund. We've seen him out of goals he scored in the Champions League this season. He's captaining Dortmund at 19 years of age. It was a complete midfield performance from him. This could be a real breakout tournament for Bellingham in terms of like properly announcing himself on the world's biggest stage. How impressed were you with him against Iran? Obviously, it's important that we kind of keep our feet grounded, because you don't want to put too much pressure on a young player, but he looks like he's going right to the top. And I mean, what a special footballer he is, and what an honour it is to have him in an England shirt, because we've seen England produce great midfield players down the years: Lampard, Gerrard, Scholes. I'm not saying Bellingham's going to go on and achieve what they did in their careers, because that's impossible to say, but he's got all the tools to do it. I mean, how special do you think he is?
Well, I agree with your previous videos. I think that could be a Chelsea midfield 3. That would be ideal.
Oh, mate, it needs to be. But that's
crossed, man.
Mate, it's so good.
There'd be a lot of people after his signature after this tournament, regardless, before he even kicked a ball. But now, I think the thing that strikes you most is how fearless he is. For someone who's in a tournament, things can go wrong very quickly, and we can't get too carried away. But I don't see why not, when we've seen players like I remember Michael Owen coming onto the scene. Incredible how fearless he was. He reminds me a little bit of him in a different position. Just his ability, it did take him a while to settle in. He was a bit dodgy with a few touch early doors, but after that, I mean, when he scored, I feel like already he could be one of the players of the tournament if he continues his confidence. And again, it just shows the amount of talent that the nation has to its disposal, and hopefully he can blossom into one of the best for the next generation beyond Southgate, really, in that position.
Yeah, I mean, but one of my only concerns was that when, like, I mean, I think Calvin Phillips is kind of fit to play now. One of my concerns was that, like, Southgate would just kind of revert to type and he would just go with a Rice Phillips pivot because it's what he knows and he's seen it work. And Phillips, whatever you think of him, was very good in that run to the Euros final. But I think ultimately, you look at England, and I'm sorry, but Calvin Phillips is not it for England, like, going forward, in my opinion. Yes, he'll get more caps and yes, he'll play. But if you're talking about England starting 11s, like, there's no reason for Calvin Phillips to displace any of those players. In my opinion, there really isn't. There's a real lack of quality, you would say, in midfield for England at the moment in terms of central midfield players. You look at Rice, you look at Bellingham, and then you're thinking, well, who else is there? Because Henderson's a bit over the hill. Ward-Prowse doesn't make the squad. Maddison's not a central midfield player. There's not. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I could be completely missing an obvious one, but I don't think I am. You know, central midfield's an area where England have struggled to produce quality players for a number of years now, having done so much in the past. But Dharmesh, I want to come to you on Mason Mount. It's been a difficult season for him at Chelsea. He's not delivered. It's not been up to what we expect from him. But ultimately, there's a reason why every manager he's played under always picks him. And I thought this was a big call from Southgate to pick him because, you know, this could have easily backfired, and that would have been one of the first things that would have been criticised if it wasn't a good result or performance against Iran. But Mount was actually outstanding. I know the likes of Saka and Bellingham will get the headlines, but, you know, if you watched Mason Mount in that game against Iran, he was superb. You know, the work rate off the ball, the way that he sets the tempo for the press, even on the ball. I honestly don't think that there's not many players better than Mason Mount at receiving the ball on the half turn and playing. This was a real big confidence boost for him for sure. But how important is it for him that this isn't just like a one-off and then he kind of I know you can't perform to that level every time, but that he doesn't kind of disappear for this next game against the US?
Yeah, Mason Mount, yeah, like you said, he was really, really good, actually. Probably one of his best performances, I think, overall, like, obviously taking Chelsea out of it as well. But yeah, that midfield three just works perfectly, like, in terms of balance and stuff. Even at times when Rice would sort of drop into a centre-back position, it sort of be like a 5-2-3 at times as well. So then Bellingham and Mount sort of communicate with each other, and one would bomb forward, one would drop and stuff. So yeah, and his passing as well. I remember the switch of pass at Trippier. I don't know why that's in my head, but like, I just remember that pass. I was like, wow, okay, yeah, he's definitely having a good game right now. But yeah, I think it's important as well. He doesn't get injured as well. Like you said, we're really light in midfield, I think. And maybe the only player that can maybe sort of replace him if he did get injured, similar style, maybe Conor Gallagher, potentially. But yeah, can't really fault him for the game against Iran. Like, obviously, Harry Kane didn't get any goals or anything, but neither did Mason Mount. Like, and he was still influential with ball retention, starting attacks, pressing as well. So yeah, just want him to obviously take this form into a Chelsea shirt after the World Cup, regardless. But yeah. Mount's,
I mean, this is what a lot of people don't realise, and particularly like a certain generation of fans, is that football isn't just goals and assists. Like, you know, so many people watch football and think, oh, so-and-so didn't get a goal or an assist today, so therefore they were shit. That's not how it works. I mean, you can
that's why he scored yesterday.
Yeah,
man.
you can still
whack.
you can still have a very good game and not necessarily contribute via a goal or an assist. But George, just on Mount briefly, obviously we know that every manager he's played under has consistently picked him. He's not always been like a regular starter under Southgate as such, but I mean, how big do you think this will be for his confidence? Because he needed a performance like that, and perhaps getting away from Chelsea and the pressure and of a team not doing so well and coming into England, the World Cup, kind of a new focus is perhaps exactly what he needed.
Yeah, I think he was a little bit fortuitous in the fact that, as you mentioned, that we did have limited options in midfield. So I feel like Southgate was a bit, you know, he had his, you know, he had to kind of pick him in a way. But having said that, Mount still got to deliver, and I think, as you mentioned, Mount gets picked for a reason. And I know all those reasons that Dharmesh said about, you know, ball retention on the half turn, possession, starting attacks. Those are the little things that go unnoticed with Mount, and his work rate is bar none. And you need those types of players who just put in those sometimes underwhelming performances as an overall package. But if you look at how many things that they actually contribute in a game, the small details, that's probably why he gets in. It's similar with Sterling, isn't it? Potter probably has to look at this and think about how can we improve Mount at Chelsea in terms of his positioning or where he's going to play, because I feel like he is better in that midfield role than he is on maybe the right that he does often play for Chelsea. But yeah, that was a huge confidence booster for him, because I think he was at risk of potentially not being as majorly involved due to his form.
Yeah, no, for sure. Obviously, I think we can all agree the front three is probably going to stay the same. No need to talk too much about Harry Kane, but we'll just round out by talking about the two wide players. And I think, for most people, the consensus was that this England team pretty much picks itself. And the only position that was really kind of up for debate is that right-hand side, when you've got the likes of Saka, Foden, Grealish, Rashford, Maddison now in the mix there as well. That's kind of the only position that was sort of open. And Southgate went with Saka. He's had a fantastic season so far for Arsenal, done really well. And Dharmesh, I have to say, he was absolutely superb against Iran. 2 great goals. He was direct, he's skillful, takes players on. He seems to have that confidence about him. And I think with that performance, I think he probably has locked down that right-hand side for the time being for England. How he can be a big player for us in this World Cup.
Yeah, I texted literally my mates and stuff. I was like, Saka hands down man of the match. Apart from Bellingham, I thought Saka was the best player on. What day was it? Oh God,
Monday. It was Monday, wasn't it? Yeah,
Monday.
Yeah.
Oh my God, this has been a long week, but yeah. But yeah, Saka's quality, man. He's literally nailed down that position. I don't see anyone sort of taking that. And one thing as well, he's quite versatile as well. Like, he can play on the left, he can play at wing back as well. Like, say if we do revert to a 5, you can also play left wing back as well. I keep going back to if Shaw does get injured, then Southgate can revert to a 5 and play Saka at left wing back as well. But his best position is at right wing, to be honest. And yeah, he's been phenomenal. But I don't know what you boys think as well. But I don't know. My gut says Jack Grealish will start, I think, against USA. I don't know why. I just got a feeling he might rotate a little bit more.
Maybe, although I think it's pretty hard to drop Saka after that. That's the only thing. I'm a massive Grealish fan. I think I would love to see him start more in an England shirt, but I think it's almost impossible for him to start this game against the US based on what that front three did against Iran. But George, obviously, just on Saka, and we talked about talented players that can't really seem, it's not really happened for them so far in an England shirt. And I'm not necessarily going to ask you about Saka, but I'm going to ask you about kind of the man that he's keeping out. Phil Foden, undoubtedly one of the most talented players in England. Such a great player, has been fantastic in the Premier League for Man City. But for whatever reason, and he's still young, he's got loads and loads of time, but right now, it's not really happened for him in an England shirt. Do you think one of the big things for Southgate, perhaps not to work out in this tournament, although that would be a plus, is how to actually get the best out of Phil Foden in an England shirt? Because again, a player that talented has to be starting, or would be starting for a lot of other countries. But for England, and you can't knock it because it's obviously it has worked, but what do you think the key is to unlocking the best out of Phil Foden in an England shirt? Because that's something that Southgate has struggled with.
Yeah, I thought a lot about this, and I think the first thing he needs is probably patience, and I think Southgate needs to reiterate that. He's still very young, he's going to have time. Granted, sometimes they don't blossom into the players that they are when they're young and they're fearless. They have no worries. You only have to watch some of I know you can make any player look good on a highlights reel, but I watched one yesterday of him and Grealish playing some kind of ping pong.
Oh, that was sick, mate. It was class.
It absolutely. I know most footballers can do that, but it was just a joke to watch. He is incredible. I mean, the whole hype about the blonde hair and how he took off last tournament, and he is without doubt, I think, technically one of the best players that we have. And he's been kind of mirrored a lot in the example of Gaza in a very similar style. I think that position, if not for Saka's performance on Monday, could have still been up for grabs, very much so, because I thought Saka was a bit of a gamble. I mean, And on
Yeah.
Saka, by the way, I just think just to touch on what add to what Dharmesh said. I mean, what a huge headstrong character to come back from that penalty miss in the final to then, to put on a performance like that when the world's watching and he knows that he's got to perform in that game, otherwise that position's up for grabs. So I think Southgate again has probably taken him under his wing, being in that position of being, missing penalties and all the rest of it. I think that was incredible. But back on Foden. He can also work as an impact player. When the game's stretched, when legs are loose and defenders are sticking out legs because they're tired. I think that's probably one of the best opportunities to bring Foden on, where he comes on and just brings a complete fresh dynamic to the front three. So I think he's still got a very valuable part to play in this tournament, but I think he's got to be patient.
I mean, that was one thing that I think was highlighted for me from that Iran game is the impact from the bench, and the use of the bench and the squad is going to be so important in this tournament. Through how hot it is, through kind of different circumstances of the game. In England, you'd have to say second to none, really, in options they've got from the bench to be able to bring on the likes of Rashford, Grealish, Maddison, Foden, amongst others. Dharmesh, that could make a big difference as you hope England progress further into the tournament. Having that quality from the bench when games are tight or you need to switch things up, that could serve England well ahead of a lot of other teams. And it's great to see the likes of Rashford and Grealish come off the bench and make an impact.
Yeah, no, 100% agree with what you said. Like the impact, the subs are fantastic. To be honest, Grealish, Foden, obviously Rashford. What was it? 2 touches? He got a goal, something like that. 3 touches. Yeah, he's had a good season. To be fair, Rashford. The only thing I worry about is maybe if we come up against a proper low block team who will just lump it up. That's my only sort of concern with England. But then obviously we've got James Maddison, who I think is probably most capable of unlocking like a defense potentially, and maybe Foden as well. I think his ball carrying is probably his best attribute. Phil Foden, like the way he glides with the ball is insane. Like it's literally like running on water basically. But yeah, I think it's important as well. Southgate actually rotates his front three in a way in terms of getting into games, so they're actually sharp as well. Like say if Sterling or Saka get injured, then you don't want one of those players being rusty. So I think it's important as well. That's why I've kind of got the feeling like he might change one of the front three tomorrow. But hey, I might be wrong. Who knows?
I mean, George, just moving on to Sterling before we round out. It's so annoying seeing guys that have been not doing it week in, week out for Chelsea for pretty much the whole of the season, go and put an England shirt on and it's different. Do you think, I'm sure Graham Potter would have been watching that game. Do you think, seeing this and seeing how well Sterling's done on an England shirt, is that Potter needs to utilise Sterling in a different way to get the best out of him, because how he's being utilised at Chelsea at the moment isn't working?
Yeah, yes, please. I mean, I'm sure he's not tuning in to us tonight, but he should be watching somewhere. Look, I think every manager has their different ideas and they can be quite stubborn at times. And look, I'm not going to sit here and say that Potter doesn't know what he's doing by bringing Sterling into that kind of fullback role, but it's quite blatantly obvious sometimes that, Sterling is so much more useful in playing in an attacking role. Granted, again, he's probably not got the same amount of service as what England provide him compared to Chelsea, and we know that. We're a lot slower. We don't have the attacking players that give him the opportunities that he needs in games. We've said this. We've made a comparison about Haaland as well. Playing for Chelsea wouldn't score as many goals. We know that. But yeah, again, he's another player that just for England just seems to turn it on and be a completely different player. I mean, the finish the other day just instinctive.
Outside the foot,
Chelsea,
wasn't it?
Chelsea takes about 50 touches and just messes about. Potter, just sort it out, please, when he gets back.
Yeah, Sterling does need to be utilised in a different way for sure. But yeah, boys, let's round this out then. Score predictions for tomorrow night. England with a win can qualify for the last 16 of the World Cup and all but end the US's hopes of joining them there. Dharmesh, I'll start with you. What are you thinking?
Ooh, I'm going to go 3-1 to England.
Yep.
Yeah.
Goal scorers?
Goal scorers. I'll go, I think Kane will definitely score. Maguire, on his 50th. Who mentioned it? Was it George? Or
Yeah.
Charlie?
Yeah, I think it
wasn't me.
yeah.
Yeah, I think one of you said Maguire will score, so I'm going to back that as well. Maguire, and I'll probably go with Trippier, free kick actually. Yeah.
George, what we saying? Win?
Yeah, I think probably expect tight. A tight game. I'm going to go 2-1. I still think we might have a lapse of concentration. There's something about, I don't know, appearances and caps and hitting those whole numbers where I do think Maguire might score on his 50th.
You've convinced
don't know why. Yeah, and I don't know, maybe Saka or Rashford again. I'm not sure. I'd love to see Kane score because I think you need strikers scoring in tournaments. So I hope Dharmesh is right. And obviously, if we bash USA, then I really hope so. But I'm going to go 2-1.
Yeah, mate, that's exactly what I was going to go. I'm going to go to 2-1 as well. Goal score is tricky, really. Mate, I wouldn't be. I wouldn't be surprised if Pulisic scored and done the gritty on us, which would be so shit.
Oh man, don't put that picture in my head, man.
I think a goal for Kane. I think that's needed. I can probably see that happening, having missed out last time. I'm going to go Kane with a goal, and I'm going to go with. I'm going to go Bellingham again. I think Bellingham might get himself on the score sheet again. So I'm going to Kane and Bellingham. Going to go for a 2-1 England win. But yeah, I think we're under no illusions that this will be a much tighter game than the one against Iran was. But yeah, seems like a good point to round out, guys. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks for your comments in the chat as always. I'll be back again soon. Probably match review for the US game. Probably straight afterwards or on Saturday at some point. So make sure you tune in for them. Thanks for tuning in tonight as always. George, Dharmesh, thanks for your time, lads. Appreciated as always. Guys, take care. Smash the likes on the way out. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already. And we'll catch you again soon.